Hey Icon Collective family, how's it going? My name's James Geary, and today we're going to be going over a few tips, tricks, and things to keep in mind when making yourself a project template for your DAW. With that being said, we're also going to be going over my project template for Ableton Live 10, and I'll be breaking down a few different things throughout the template and why I put some of the things in the places that they are. Now, just a piece of advice going in, everyone kind of has their own things that work for them. And the most important thing about making a project template is taking a second to realize the things that you do every project that are non-creative, that take up time, such as maybe grouping things, routing things, and finding a way to put those into a project template without necessarily dictating any creative decisions. Something I see a lot of people do is make project templates that have a lot of drums in them. They'll have like a whole song laid out with like markers, and things like that can be good for learning. I do find it a little bit better for me personally to leave things open-ended and to not just throw drum samples and markers and kind of make a few creative decisions before the project's really made. I like leaving things as open-ended as possible so I can go in and really pick the samples, sounds, and layout for the song that feels right per song, so to say. So I like to leave my project pretty clear of any samples. I know some people put a lot of things in a drum rack or maybe even throw on a few synths. I like to leave things nice and open-ended so I can just throw on whatever I'm feeling like doing, and especially with creating a lot of samples or channels like that in a project, it's going to take much longer to load. And on top of that, where's the fun in picking new drums? It's always helpful to keep your drum samples updated, and it's annoying to keep going in and trying to change those in the template. So the first thing I'd recommend anyone doing before we go into my template is take a second and study your own workflow. Write down the things that you do every project and keep those in mind when creating your own template, because the things that I do and the things that work for me may not necessarily be good for you. So you got to support your own workflow, know yourself. That is literally the most important thing about being an artist, a musician, music producer, really anything. Know yourself and know what works for you. So I'm kind of just going to be going over my general layout here and a few things that I like to do. I keep a few main groups by default. I have like a drum group, a percussion group, a synths group, an effects group, and a returns group. We're going to go over the returns group in just a second, and also sidechain routing. My drums group's really open-ended, just an empty drum rack. I have a default MIDI and audio channel set up to always throw on a Pro Q on the natural phase mode, and also a utility. You can do that just by throwing these things on the channel. If you make a new channel, throw on the Pro Q and utility, and by right-clicking and assigning that as the default audio track, you can do the same with MIDI. Those are super helpful, just throwing on some plugins you always use. I always use utility, I always use Pro Q, almost always, so keeping those on there by default whenever I create a new track or channel is super helpful. For the drums group, like I mentioned, just an empty drum rack, lots of space, so to say, to throw in whatever I want, and samples depending on if I'm feeling like making something a little bit dusty and dirty or something clean and punchy and modern. The perks group's similar, just an audio channel and a simpler. Simplers and samplers are great. I love being able to pitch samples around in there. There's tons of things you can do under the controls too, so I like to leave that. That's really the most I have on there, because even in my synths group, as you can see, it's just an empty MIDI channel with the space there for something like FM8, Serum, or anything to be thrown on to either make a sound or resample or do something about that. Same thing with the effects group, just two audio channels. Now, something that is very important about these groups is how I sidechain them. I'm sidechaining through Volume Shaper, which I'll show you how I'm doing this because some people don't really know about this yet. I will set up a sidechain trigger channel with MIDI right here, and through this external instrument rack I created, you can route them to each volume shaper. I'm just going to delete it real quick. If you throw on an external instrument, throw it onto your sidechain trigger, and set the MIDI output to whatever channel you have volume shaper on. For this case, it's all of the groups, so perks. You can hit Command G if you're on Mac, or Control G if you're on the PC, and it'll throw it in an instrument rack. And essentially you can just keep duplicating this and send one to every group, because I do have a volume shaper on all the groups by default. And something I like to keep in mind is sidechaining these different groups based on what they are. I don't want the hats to be cut out as much, so often when going in here I'll only draw like something like a super small transient cut for the hats, even if that. Whereas for something like the synths group, I will draw in a much more drastic curve. So it really depends, and that also goes a lot into how I produce. Honestly, when I'm in the zone, I'm just throwing things in the project. Even if it's not like a perk or something, if it's a sound I want to just have the transient cut out and not have like a drastic, obvious sidechain to, I'll throw it in the perks group, which ends up in all my projects being super disorganized, but it works for me. The theory behind it's super simple. You can just create MIDI here. The great thing is if you do your drums in the drum rack like I put here, you can just do kick, snare, let's pretend that's that, copy that over, and if you change the pattern, all you have to do is copy and paste that MIDI up there and it'll update all your side chains, which is awesome. Also, if you're sending MIDI to Volume Shaper and using this method, it helps to put it on one-shot mode right there, or else the MIDI is not going to update properly. As for sidechaining, that's really about it and how I do that. If you do use compressors, things of that nature, setting up something a little bit more catered to that workflow also works. Maybe putting in like a little trigger sample or just routing the compressors to the group beforehand. So all in all, my groups are pretty simple, not a lot going on. I really like to leave things open-ended. The only thing I really do is kind of create that space there for me to quickly throw things into and get the side chains all routed, so I can really pretty much have an empty project, but save a few seconds of time in routing side chains and throwing on, drum racks and things like that. Next up, we have the returns. This is really based on you. I know people that use like 6 to 9 of these things or however many Ableton lets you use. I'm a little bit more minimal on it. I'll keep like a long reverb. I really like Valhalla Room. Thing's great. And similar settings with Valhalla Room, except shorter decay, a short reverb, a little bit more mono too, and a delay, which is courtesy of Echo Boy here. Super great. Love you, Sound Toys. Something I do get questions about a lot, and something in my template that's honestly super crucial, I feel like a lot of people overlook in terms of wanting to get punchy mix downs, is sidechaining your returns, which is all those reverbs and delays. I'm going to go over how I do that real quick. I'll make an audio channel. As you see right here, I have one for the returns already, and set it to the in mode, so Ableton knows to receive audio on that channel. And I'll just make a new return here to kind of show you what's up. Throw whatever on the return, open it up, and same deal, just send it to the returns channel. Now this is the most important thing here, and do not forget to do this in your template, is right clicking on this and clicking on disable all sends. They'll show grayed out when they're disabled. This helps with two really crucial things. One, obviously having a send on a return bus for sends, you can create an infinite feedback loop which will destroy your ears if you accidentally use one of the returns on there. But even more important, if you don't disable the sends, there's going to be a few milliseconds of latency. It's nothing huge, but it's definitely noticeable. So making sure those sends are disabled is really crucial and a lifesaver. And this just goes to my master too. So on the master, we have just a few simple things. I have a disabled Pro L, and if you notice, all the plugins on my project are disabled just in case I don't want to use them. I don't want to be committed to anything. I want to have the signal flow as pure as possible, so to say. I want to know if I'm working with a limiter on, because it's easy to throw things on your master and forget they're there. Personally, I don't like producing with the mastering chain on. I absolutely hate making a song, mixing it, having it sound great, and then realizing there's a master chain, taking that chain off, and everything's just way out of whack, and it's like, oh great, now I gotta go in and fix all this. So super simple, but sometimes working with a limiter is helpful, especially when doing weird sound design. You're accidentally flipping knobs, and next thing you know, it's coming out really loud. So it helps to have that option there. I have Pro L. I've been using Invisible Limiter a lot lately too. I know Pro L 2 just dropped, if you have to check that one out. I also keep on an MSED. There's another video on this channel you should definitely check out where I go over how I use that to do mid-side processing. Super simple, just to get a quick mid-side preview. Now, another cool tip that I'd love to show you guys is with Voxengo Span. I always keep one on my master, and something super important that I found pretty recently that's honestly a game changer. If you go to the routing, set it to mid-side stereo, and set the underlay to side, it'll actually show you both a mid and a side signal on the analyzer for the sound, which is great for referencing, and honestly was a game changer for me. Other than that, we also have this SM-Exoscope thing. It's a freeware plugin. Nice analyzer. If you're doing anything with side chains, just checking the curves, great for checking your waveform and any little tasks that you do want to see a visual representation of what's going on. SM-Exoscope is super helpful. All in all, that's how I set up my project template. It's really simple. Just some groups, some sidechain routings, and the returns, along with a few metering plugins and a disabled limiter on my master. Like I said, I don't like to do too much. I don't like dictating creative decisions before I even go into the project, because who knows what the song is going to turn into or what I'm going to feel like when I'm creating. So I want to leave that nice and open-ended. But the most important thing is to find what works for you. That's really about it. I hope I could help you out some way, but the best thing you can do is dig inside, find the things you do every project, and put those into a template. Wish you the best of luck. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and have a great day.